Most people grow up with a simple story about success. Work hard. Be talented. Stay determined. If you do these things consistently enough, you will rise. It is a compelling story because it is clean, motivating, and morally satisfying. It tells us that achievement is fair, that excellence is visible, and that the world rewards merit in a mostly straightforward way. Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell unsettles that story. It does not deny talent. It does not deny hard work. But it asks whether those things are enough to explain extraordinary achievement. Gladwell's answer is no. Success, especially exceptional success, is rarely a purely individual event. It grows out of structures, timing, culture, inherited habits, hidden opportunities, and patterns of advantage that often remain invisible once a person has reached the top. This is what makes the book so memorable. It takes something people think they understand and turns it into a more layered and surprising question. Instead of asking what successful people are like, Gladwell asks where they come from, what opportunities they received, what historical moment they entered, what family and cultural patterns shaped them, and what systems quietly amplified their early advantages. In this audio summary, we will walk through the major themes of the book in a way that is clear, thoughtful, and connected. We will look at the role of opportunity, the famous discussion of practice, the impact of timing, the idea of cultural legacy, and the wider challenge the book poses to the myth of the self-made individual. Outliers is not just about famous people or statistical extremes. It is about the hidden architecture behind human achievement. And once that architecture becomes visible, the meaning of success begins to change. At the heart of Outliers is a simple but powerful claim. Extraordinary achievement cannot be understood by looking only at the individual. Gladwell argues that we tend to tell success stories in a very narrow way. We look at a brilliant entrepreneur, a world-class musician, an elite athlete, or a high-achieving student, and we focus on their discipline, ambition, and gifts. These qualities matter, of course. But Gladwell says we stop the story too soon. We do not ask enough about the environment around that person. We do not ask what opportunities were available early on, what cultural assumptions shaped their behavior, what family influences built their confidence or habits, or what invisible structures made their path more likely. This is why the book feels so provocative. It does not attack excellence. It reframes it. Gladwell wants us to see that individuals succeed within contexts. They rise inside ecosystems. And those ecosystems are not distributed equally. Some people are born closer to networks of opportunity. Some enter fields at exactly the right historical moment. Some benefit from institutions that notice and nurture them early. Others may be equally capable but never receive the same reinforcement. The deeper point is not that achievement is fake. It is that achievement is relational. It depends on a meeting point between personal effort and external conditions. Once that idea is accepted, success becomes both more understandable and more morally complicated. Admiration remains possible, but naive hero worship becomes harder. We begin to see that the individual story is only part of the larger design. The title of the book is important. An outlier, in statistical language, is a point far outside the normal range. Gladwell uses that concept to talk about people whose achievements place them at the extreme edge of success. These are not merely competent people. They are unusually successful people, people whose accomplishments seem extraordinary enough to demand explanation. But Gladwell's interest is not in celebrating them from a distance. It is in understanding how outliers are produced. What conditions make the exceptional possible? What hidden patterns push certain individuals to the edge of the curve? This matters because modern culture often treats outliers as self-contained miracles. A genius appears. A prodigy emerges. A billionaire builds something historic. The event feels almost magical. Gladwell wants to replace that magical feeling with analysis. He wants to understand the pathways that lead there. That change in perspective is one of the most valuable things the book offers. It shifts attention away from personality alone and toward process, systems, and accumulated advantages. In this sense, an outlier is not just a person. It is a clue. It is evidence that something larger may be happening beneath the visible surface. By studying outliers carefully, Gladwell hopes to reveal the hidden rules that shape success more broadly. One of the strongest ideas in Outliers is that opportunity is not evenly distributed, and the unevenness often begins very early. Gladwell shows that many people who later appear uniquely gifted were placed in conditions that gave them unusual chances to develop. Those chances may have seemed small at first. A little extra coaching, a slightly earlier introduction to a field, better access to practice, membership in an institution that selects, trains, and rewards certain traits. But these small differences can compound. Once someone is identified as promising, they may receive more attention, more time, better peers, better instruction, and more chances to improve. The initial advantage becomes a widening gap. This is one of the book's most important lessons. Systems often mistake early advantage for natural superiority. Then they reinforce that advantage until it looks inevitable. Gladwell is especially interested in the hidden nature of this process. By the time success becomes visible, the years of accumulated support are often forgotten or never noticed at all. The final result gets attributed entirely to character or talent. The book challenges this simplification. It asks us to notice how institutions participate in the making of excellence. Schools, families, sports leagues, cultural communities, and industries all create pathways that help some people move faster and farther than others. This is not an argument against effort. It is an argument for seeing effort in context. Hard work often matters most when opportunity has created a place for it to matter. That makes opportunity itself one of the central characters in the story of achievement. Perhaps the most famous concept associated with Outliers is the 10,000-hour idea. Gladwell uses it to suggest that world-class performance in many fields requires a vast amount of practice. The point is not that 10,000 is a magical number that guarantees excellence. The deeper lesson is that mastery is far less accidental than people often assume. Elite performers are not simply born fully formed. They develop through repeated, sustained, focused effort over long periods of time. This is an important corrective to the fantasy of effortless genius. What looks like brilliance from a distance is often the visible surface of many invisible years of work. But Gladwell does something more interesting than simply praising practice. He asks who gets the chance to practice that much and under what conditions. This is where the concept becomes socially revealing. A child with access to equipment, mentorship, time, stability, and encouragement can accumulate deep experience early. Someone equally gifted without those supports may never get close to the same developmental runway. So even the story of practice contains a hidden story about opportunity. This is a major theme in the book. Greatness may require practice, but practice itself is not equally available. The 10,000-hour discussion remains memorable because it works on two levels. On one level, it reminds us that excellence is labor-intensive. On another, it reminds us that labor only becomes transformative when the surrounding world allows it to be sustained. In that sense, the idea is not only about discipline. It is about the structures that make discipline fruitful. Another recurring theme in Outliers is the importance of historical timing. Gladwell argues that some people succeed not only because they are capable, but because their age, skills, and ambition happen to align with a larger moment of change. In other words, history opens certain doors only at particular times. If a person arrives just as an industry is being transformed, a technology is emerging, or a profession is expanding, their chances may be dramatically different than someone born a few years earlier or later. This idea challenges one of the deepest assumptions people make about success. We tend to imagine that exceptional individuals would have succeeded under any circumstances. Gladwell asks us to consider that many of them needed a very specific historical window. Without that window, the same person might still have been smart, driven, and disciplined, but the scale of their eventual achievement could have been far smaller. This does not make their success meaningless. It makes it situated. It reveals that history is not just background scenery. It is an active force in the making of opportunity. This theme broadens the book's argument beyond personal biography. Now success is shaped not only by family and institutions, but also by the era itself. The individual story intersects with larger economic and cultural movements. Once again, Gladwell is urging the reader to look outward. Achievement is not just a property of people. It is also a property of moments. One of the most illuminating patterns in the book is the way small advantages can become large outcomes over time. Gladwell shows how tiny early differences can be amplified by institutions until they produce striking disparities. A child who is slightly more mature at a given age may perform better in a trial. That leads to selection. Selection leads to better training. Better training leads to greater confidence and skill. Years later, the result appears dramatic, and observers may interpret it as proof of exceptional natural ability. But the chain began with something much smaller and more contingent. This is one of the book's most powerful insights because it reveals how systems create self-fulfilling outcomes. Once the world starts investing in a person, that person often improves in exactly the way the investment predicts. This does not mean talent is unreal. It means talent is often cultivated through feedback loops. The book encourages readers to notice how opportunity compounds. We are used to thinking about compound growth in money, but Gladwell shows a kind of compound growth in human development. Advantages accumulate. Reinforcement accumulates. Access accumulates. And by the time the outcome is visible, the beginning has been forgotten. This idea has practical and moral implications. It suggests that societies should pay close attention to how they allocate early chances. Because once the compounding begins, the difference between those included and those overlooked can become enormous. Outliers also questions the belief that raw intelligence automatically leads to major success. Gladwell is interested in the many ways that brilliant people can still fail to translate ability into achievement. He suggests that success often requires more than cognitive power. It may require social ease, confidence around authority, the ability to navigate institutions, practical judgment, support from family, or the right educational environment. In this way, the book complicates the popular fantasy that IQ alone explains who rises. A person may be extremely smart and still remain blocked by class barriers, cultural expectations, lack of mentorship, or difficulty turning ability into recognized performance. This is one of the book's more subtle contributions. It reveals that the path from talent to outcome is not automatic. There are many conversion points where potential can either be nurtured or wasted. This helps explain why the world contains so many people who are capable but not visibly successful. Intelligence may be widespread. The opportunities and social tools required to convert it into prestige, wealth, or institutional recognition are less evenly shared. Gladwell's larger message here is not cynical. It is clarifying. If talent alone does not explain success, then we need a richer account of what does. That richer account will always include environment. One of the most distinctive aspects of Outliers is its attention to culture. Gladwell argues that people inherit more than language, customs, and cuisine from their communities. They also inherit assumptions about authority, work, discipline, communication, and risk. These inherited patterns can influence how well people perform in certain settings, especially when those settings reward or punish particular behaviors. Gladwell's argument is not that culture is destiny. It is that culture leaves traces. It shapes habits of mind and habits of interaction that continue to matter even when people enter modern institutions. This is a crucial extension of the book's core thesis. Success is not just about what you personally choose. It is also about the deep scripts you carry without always noticing them. Some cultural legacies may encourage persistence, deference, confrontation, caution, collective responsibility, or belief in the value of long effort. Depending on the situation, these traits may become strengths or liabilities. Gladwell uses cultural examples to show that what looks like individual performance may partly be inherited pattern. This is one of the reasons the book feels broader than a conventional success book. It moves beyond the personal and into the sociological. The individual is always embedded in a lineage. Family history matters. Group memory matters. Collective habits matter. Once again, Gladwell is asking the reader to widen the frame. If we want to understand why people flourish or fail, we must understand the cultures that taught them how to respond to the world. Closely related to culture is the role of family and class. Outliers suggests that children do not simply inherit money or education levels. They also inherit styles of speaking, expectations about institutions, degrees of confidence, and assumptions about what kinds of help they are entitled to seek. These subtle differences can shape later success in powerful ways. Some children grow up learning how to negotiate, how to ask questions, how to advocate for themselves, and how to see authority as something they can interact with rather than merely obey. Others grow up with different social habits that may be admirable in some ways yet less rewarded by formal institutions. Gladwell is especially interested in how these early lessons affect educational and professional outcomes. The point is not to blame families. It is to notice that social class transmits more than visible resources. It transmits styles of action. This matters because modern meritocratic systems often reward people who already speak the language of the system. Those who have learned how to present themselves, claim opportunities, and interpret institutional expectations may move more smoothly through environments such as schools, workplaces, and elite professional settings. So once again, the story of success becomes less individual than it first appears. People carry entire histories into the room with them. And those histories can either align with the system or create friction within it. As the book develops, one of its clearest targets is the myth of the self-made person. This myth is deeply attractive because it affirms independence, grit, and moral desert. It tells us that the most successful individuals rose by force of will alone. Gladwell does not deny the force of will, but he argues that no one is fully self-made in the simplistic sense the myth implies. Every success story is entangled with opportunities, support systems, mentors, timing, and inherited advantages. Even great effort often depends on someone making that effort possible. A teacher notices. A parent sacrifices. A community values a skill. A historical window opens. An institution invites. A field emerges at the right time. None of this cancels personal excellence. It simply removes the illusion of total isolation. This idea matters because myths shape values. If we believe success is entirely self-generated, we may overpraise the winners and misunderstand those who do not rise. We may ignore how many capable people never receive the right opportunities. We may also fail to see the moral responsibility of societies to create conditions in which talent can actually grow. Outliers urges a more humble and more truthful narrative. Successful people are not only authors of their lives. They are also beneficiaries of histories, systems, and relationships. Once you accept the core argument of Outliers, an important question follows. If success depends so much on opportunity and environment, what does that imply about fairness? Gladwell's answer is not presented as a political program, but the implication is clear. Societies waste enormous amounts of potential when opportunity is distributed narrowly. There may be far more talent in the world than visible success suggests. Many people never become exceptional not because they lack ability, but because the supporting conditions never arrived. They were never in the right classroom, never on the right team, never introduced to the right skill, never given enough practice time, never granted the cultural confidence needed to navigate institutions, never born at the right moment. This is one of the book's most hopeful and troubling ideas at the same time. Hopeful because it suggests human potential is abundant. Troubling because it means many failures are not simply personal. They may reflect misstructures and unequal conditions. The practical takeaway is that if we want more excellence, we should not only celebrate exceptional individuals after the fact. We should invest more carefully in the environments where potential is formed. That means taking early development seriously. It means designing institutions that recognize and nurture talent more broadly. And it means being less naive about how success actually happens. Outliers is a memorable and influential book, but it is worth reading with both appreciation and caution. Gladwell is a gifted storyteller, and one of his talents is turning complex social patterns into clear, compelling narratives. That is part of why the book has had such lasting impact. But it also means some arguments can feel cleaner and more universal than reality may justify. Social life is messy. Success has many causes. Not every example becomes a rule. The best way to read the book, then, is not as a final theory of achievement, but as a powerful lens. It directs attention to factors that are often ignored. It asks better questions than many conventional success narratives ask. It opens the hidden background of talent, practice, timing, and culture. That alone makes it valuable. A good reader can let the book sharpen perception without turning every memorable claim into rigid doctrine. Used that way, Outliers becomes a tool for thinking more deeply about excellence, institutions, and opportunity. In the end, Outliers changes the way success looks. Before reading it, achievement may seem like a spotlight falling on a gifted individual. After reading it, the spotlight widens. Behind the person, you begin to see family, culture, timing, practice, institutions, and hidden advantage. You begin to see the architecture. That is the book's real achievement. It does not destroy admiration. It deepens explanation. It reminds us that people do matter, that effort matters, that discipline matters, but also that no one rises in a vacuum. Every extraordinary performance is connected to a larger pattern of support and circumstance. This realization can produce humility. It can produce compassion. And it can produce a more serious commitment to building fairer systems of opportunity. If success is partly made rather than merely found, then societies have a role in making more of it possible. That may be the deepest lesson Gladwell offers. Not that greatness is an illusion, but that greatness is collaborative in ways we do not usually acknowledge. Outliers invites us to become better observers of the forces that shape human lives. It asks us to look beyond the hero story and into the structures that create the conditions for excellence. And once we do that, we can no longer think about achievement in quite the same way again.